Hey,
Hey Joe, welcome.
welcome. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
We're just waiting for the rest of the people to come on in and join us.
Okay, great.
And I'm getting a couple last minute registrations right now.
Okay, no problem.
How was your day? Busy?
It was very busy, running around, one thing to the next. That's good, though. That's the way I like my days to go.
Yeah, me too. It was like kind of like s- sliding into a home plate here at the end of the day.
Wait a minute. This is the end of the day? This all kind of runs together.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Well, I figured out the difference between the normal day and the end of the day. The end of the day are the calls like this that I take from home, and the rest of the day is at the office.
I'm just getting a couple people, getting a few more invites in
No problem.
for our last minute guys. And I'll go ahead and I'll forward you some of the registration emails. That's one of the things that I was hoping to do today, but didn't.
No, I understand. I know you're.
It was one of those days. What's your email address, Joe?
You could send it to jpaulbeck at me.com.
I got you. I'm not going to send you yourself.
Yeah, no, I'm here.
And then the nice thing is, like I said, whatever um, we'll have everything recorded, so everyone who misses or is interested and has a question or misses something, they'll be able to chime in, um, and then they'll be able to actually rewatch since all
Sure.
of this will save all of this. So that'll be great. That'll work out really well. So right now it is a couple minutes to 8. My name's Conrad Flynn. We're going to go through some introductions here in just a minute. Let you know who everyone is and what everyone's all about. As we're going to be sharing some cool stuff with you tonight. But we're actually going to leave a moment to let all the stragglers come on in and join us. And obviously, we're welcoming anyone who wants to join in progress. So if you're just chiming in right now and somebody comes to mind who you feel would enjoy sitting in on a session like this as we're talking about how to get started in real estate investing, then I invite you to share the URL and invite them to join in progress. We'd obviously love to have them. But we're not going to wait too much longer. We're going to just give everybody about a minute or two to chime in. And if you're participating in the Hangout, don't be alarmed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mute everybody as they come into the Hangout initially, and then if you want to ask a question or participate a little bit later on, um, you could hit me up in the chat box, and I'll unmute you so you can ask a question. But just one quick housekeeping note that I want to share with everyone quick is if you are watching on the Google event page, you can stream live and you can ask questions, but you won't be able to ask a question with your voice unless you click on that link to actually join the Hangout on air. But if you're watching this on a screen with a black background, you can participate. If you're watching this on a screen with a gray or white background, that means you can stream live, but we won't be able to hear you if you want to ask a question. So go ahead and click that link that I gave you, or to use the blue start button in order to join the Hangout. So just be aware of that. You'll be able to get all the content, but we won't be able to hear you if you decide to go on and ask a question. So like I said, we're going to just give everybody an extra minute to chime in and join us. And we're actually going to get things started in just a minute. Hang tight. Right, it is just about that time. It is a minute after. I gave you guys an extra minute. We're going to go ahead and get started, and I actually already heard from a couple people here responding to the emails and some text message to say that they're chiming in a little bit late, but they're going to get started. So that's cool. Welcome. Those of you who are watching the Google Hangout, I can see you. Hi, Christopher. Hi, Corinne. Welcome to the broadcast. Again, just a quick housekeeping note. I'm going to start everyone off muted. And if you do want to ask a question a little bit later on, you can type it into the chat box if you just want to chat with us. And if you want to ask a question with your real-life voice, which Joe and I would both love to hear you, we'll unmute you, and you can ask a question that way too. For those of you who are watching on the event page, again, as I said, if you just have a white or gray background on your screen, you'll be able to watch us live, but we won't be able to see that you're participating. So go ahead and click that link that I gave you, or click that blue start button. You could join the live Hangout, and that means we could see that you're here, and you can ask some questions and participate. So looks like we've got some people joined up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just kick things off here real quick. My name's Conrad. A lot of you might recognize me from some of the Facebook real estate groups and communities that we're associated with. And I started in real estate investing a couple years ago, and what I have, my own experience has been great and a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it, and I sort of started the groups to help out other people in the community who were getting into investing or had places to rent or had places to sell and wanted to do that outside of real estate markets. But it started bringing a lot of people to me to ask me questions and try to get started, which I really love that there's a lot of people out there who are interested in getting going, and I always try to give the best advice I can, but I always thought what I really wanted to do is to hook up with a local real estate expert here in Eastern PA and just do a live broadcast like this where we could just hang out and share some cool stuff. And I, of course, have been lucky enough to find one. So I'm going to get you introduced to my friend Joe Beck, who is a local real estate expert. He's got hundreds and hundreds of transactions under his belt. And not only is he real seasoned and experienced in real estate, but what I think is very important is he's also one of the top guys locally for helping other people get into real estate for the first time. So not only has he done it, and he does it successfully every day, but he helps other people get in, so he's great at teaching it and coaching other people through the process, and I think that's really important too. So without further ado, I'd like everyone to get to know the real expert for tonight for a minute, Joe Beck.
Thanks, Conrad. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. Listen, I wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to get on this Hangout. One of the things that I know about everybody, especially in today's world, is that there's just always things that take our time away, a lot of distractions, a lot of different things. So the first thing I'd like to do is I just to like compliment everybody here for just taking a little bit of time out of their busy schedule to learn a little bit more about real estate investing and learn a little bit more about how real estate investing might be able to help you. Now, one of the things that I like to do when I kind of talk a little bit about real estate investing is just kind of get into a little bit about my background. I don't want to bore you with too much of it. I'm going to give you the summarized version of it. Probably not unlike somebody on this call, maybe a bunch of you, maybe just a few. I did the whole corporate thing for a while, worked my butt off for big companies, had achieved, a certain level of success, quite honestly, with a couple of larger companies, but I had the real misfortune of being in great industries at the peak of those industries. And unfortunately, what happened was every time I would get to the peak or the plateau of where I could be in an individual company, something happened. I would get laid off, the company would restructure, and I found myself kind of restarting. And I'd always known that there was something to real estate investing. So in one of my last true corporate stops, I decided to look a little bit closer at real estate, and I became a real estate investor. Now, I'm skipping over a lot of little steps. I was always one of those secret books and tapes DVD guys. I would be up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I'd be spending $39.95 to learn about real estate investing and then talking to people over the phone, regarding real estate investing, but I never was able to do anything with it. And I really wasn't able to do anything until I got hooked up with a local real estate coach. And what happened was, after about 6 months of doing investing and working with this mentoring program I was working with, I was actually able to replace my full-time income. And ultimately, at that point, I decided that it made more sense to become a full-time real estate investor because I was making more money part-time as an investor, about 15 hours a week, than I was in my full-time job. And I was a little afraid about doing that, about leaving a job, certainly a decent paying job. So I was asked by this program if I wanted to get involved in coaching and teaching other investors. So I spent a period of time as a coach, and one of the most proudest accomplishments that I have professionally is I've had the opportunity to literally work with thousands of investors. I have personally coached over 500 investors, many of them from the local area here, all the way from New England all the way down through Maryland, Virginia, DC area. I have quite a few students that are out there, and I really take pride in having an opportunity of helping those people. Conrad gave you a real brief introduction on my investing results. I've done a couple hundred transactions. I don't even know what the actual current number is. The number keeps changing. And, one of the things that I've learned, in addition to the deals I've done myself, I've had the opportunity to actually review and analyze thousands of transactions, not only for myself, but for the people that I coached. And, I certainly had achieved a certain level of success even as an investor. I got to a point where I built my investing business to the point that I was doing somewhere between 12 and 15 transactions every single month. And I was doing really well with it. And that was at the peak of the financial markets. Well, probably not unlike a lot of you, things changed a bit when the financial markets changed for me. My business slowed down quite a bit. And I started going out and researching, different options to kind of get my business back on track financially. And one of the things that I did is I got hooked up with a guy in a business that I didn't understand. And if you don't think that bad things can happen even when you're making a lot of money, I'm going to tell you, no matter how much money you make, if you're associated with the wrong people and things aren't going the way you're thinking they're going to go, you find yourself burning through that money pretty quick. So I went from being a full-time real estate investor to losing everything, and unfortunately I lost a lot of money that I had for myself, as well as some of my clients' money, because we were working with a guy that was supposed to provide a service that he never delivered on. Fast forwarding, all this stuff just kind of landed up on my desk. You're going to find I'm one of those guys that's a pretty straight shooter, sometimes a little too direct. I'm not one of those guys that blows smoke and everything's all rays of sunshine. What happened with me was simple. I promoted a product that the guy wasn't real. And because I promoted it through my own company, I was held responsible for it. And if you don't think that you can have real estate kind of get you back on your feet, I'm going to tell you where I was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I literally got sentenced to 2 years in a federal prison camp because of my business with this other individual. Now, fast forward 2 years, I'm through that whole thing. I'm on my feet as an investor again. And finally, they've caught up to that guy, and all of my financial responsibilities have now passed to him as far as being responsible. So the reason I tell that to people is I tell everybody that I associate with my story, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what you think you have, what you don't have. You can lose everything, and you can put yourself on your own 2 feet and have the type of life that you want to live. You know, a year and a half after being released, I'm the president of an investment firm. I'm hired by individual investors all the time to consult with them about their individual investment needs. I run a coaching and mentoring program based out of the Lehigh Valley. It's owned by a very well-respected attorney, and she said this market, this industry needs somebody that's going to be direct, to the point, straightforward, and more importantly, guarantee people's success. And I kind of signed on for that. So when I had an opportunity to meet Conrad and I was introduced to the group here, you know, I said it would be very beneficial, you know, to be able to share that story, and if for no other reason than to just let people know that no matter where you are, even if you're in a bad place financially, if your credit's banged up, if your income isn't what you want it to be, there are ways through real estate investing to get you back on your own 2 feet. And you know, I encourage you to don't lose confidence in that, because it's definitely out there. So that's a little bit about my intro. I know, Conrad, you wanted to ask a couple of questions specifically about kind of what we do and how we do it, and certainly love to answer them.
You just touched on one of the big ideas, which I'm really happy that you did. You mentioned that even if you don't have a ton of savings, or maybe you had a prior bankruptcy or a divorce and other things that actually happen to people in real life, they think that it might hold them back in some way. So I think as an introduction, what I'd like to do is talk about some of the reasons why people get in to real estate investing to start out with. And you know, I can easily share a little bit about my story, how I got involved, but I think there's a lot of different reasons, and if somebody has a bad mark in their financial history, or a problem financially, I think rather than viewing real estate investing as a challenge and having that problem hold you back from jumping in, I find the exact opposite's true. Getting into real estate investing is a great way to help solve some of those problems, what I've learned. But in my personal, for instance, what I was doing is I started my own business about 6 years ago, and I am working in the marketing space. I'm a marketing strategist, and I love what I do, and I'm kind of a workaholic, and I work my ass off for my income. And a couple years ago, you know, I realized that's an active way to earn my income, and I can make great money and help a lot of people get great results if I'm actively working in that all the time. So I started searching for ways that I could have some of the active money that I was bringing in work for me. And I really then decided, after some deliberation, that I was going to get involved in real estate, because it attracted me more than a lot of other investments, and I wound up jumping into real estate with a close friend of mine who I also work with professionally, and we started buying rentals 2 years ago. We have a handful of units now, and we're doing really great with them, and a lot of people see what we're doing and come to me asking questions about how they could jump in, and everybody kind of realizes that the investment side of it is kind of obvious. You know, holding rentals is an investment, and everybody understands, you know, I could flip a house and maybe make a chunk of cash. But there's a lot of different reasons to get involved. And Joe, I'd like you to talk about that for a little bit, because you are working with everyone from retirees who are looking to use their investments to supplement their retirement income, to people who are well into their career who are using it to build their retirement, and even from guys who are, you know, in their early 20s, 19, 20, who are using it essentially to build themselves a full-time income. So talk to me a little bit about some of the people that you see and some of the reasons you hear for them to jump in to get interested in the first place. And I think a lot of people listening today will find a lot of ways to relate.
Sure. No, that's a great point. Probably the best way of answering that is to just give you a little bit of a snapshot of a couple of my current students. And I'm thinking of these individuals in particular because they really exemplify the point that you're making. It's a father and son team. The father works in a job for a company, local company in the Lehigh Valley, likes what he does, but would leave it in a heartbeat. Not to the point that it's not a passion for him. He does it because it's a job. Probably is not on track to be able to retire anywhere near the time he would like to retire. So that's one example of what we work with a lot. People that just wake up one day and realize, I have $42,000 in my IRA or in my 401k plan. I'm 59 years old. It is impossible for me to stop working. That's one group of people we work with. Now, another group is exemplified by this individual student's son, because when he came in to interview for our program, he asked if he could involve his son in the training. His son's a young man, 19, 20 years old, just starting out in his working career. And ironically, the reason why this student wanted to involve his son is he flat out said, I don't want my son to have to go through what I'm going through. 30, 40 years from now, I don't want my boy to wake up and go, oh my gosh, I'm exactly where my dad was. And that really exemplifies a couple of different situations. Right in the middle there, in between those two types of students, is where another segment kind of lies with us. And it's the people that maybe have a decent education for themselves, but unfortunately, maybe they don't have a career in the industry that they're educated in, or worse yet, the market doesn't really afford them one. And they find themselves overeducated, overqualified for jobs that wouldn't necessarily get them where they want to go. So those are the kind of the different segments as it relates to the types of people. The biggest reason, quite honestly, for most people, and it doesn't matter whether they're saving for retirement or if they are just trying to supplement their income, for most people, the average person today struggles at some point or another during the average year to just pay their monthly bills. There's 1 or 2 months, and it doesn't matter who you are, you don't have to admit it if you don't want to, but there's always those 1 or 2 months every year, no matter who you are, where you look at the bills and the money coming in and you worry.
Yeah.
And real estate investing, it's not just about going out and making $1 million. That's great. I'm going to tell you, it's just about having some quality of life. It's just about having the balance, being able to do the things you want to do. The reason why I became a full-time real estate investor was really simple. It's like, you could work 60 hours a week at a job you tolerate, or you can work 25, 30 hours a week at a job you love and spend a lot of time with the people you care about. So those are some of the reasons and some of the types of students that we work with.
I think one of the things that I tell people all the time is if you ever use the following phrase to describe your financial health, it's feast or famine. This would probably be a very good fit for you. Now, a lot of people say, Conrad, Joe, I understand basically how the economics of rentals work. I understand basically how a flip works. There's even television shows about house flipping, and that gave it some kind of acclaim. But on the same side of that coin, they hear people like us saying, well, you could get involved in the markets and start making money without having a big pile of cash to invest right now. And people hear people like, you and I, Joe, say that, and they say, well, how the hell does that work? It sounds like rentals and flips, it does need a lot of money. So what I want you to do, Joe, is just in layman's terms and assume nothing. Assume we're totally green to this. Why don't you walk us through some of the different ways to make money with real estate? And I guess I could call them different transaction types. These are different types of deals and types of real estate transactions that exist, and not all of them include you buying a house to rent or buying a house to then later sell it. There's a lot of sort of gray areas in between, and a lot of people that you're working with are using those techniques to get themselves off the ground and then sort of springboard that into a longer term investment. But why don't you talk to us, Joe, about some of the transaction types so the new people listening can start to break that down and understand that?
Sure, and that's a great point, Conrad. I'm going to tell you, there's a very specific reason why these TV shows talk about flipping houses. It's because it's sexy. I mean, you can't get past it. Talking about making $50, $60, $7,000 flipping a property, it sounds sexy. It just does. The reality is they don't talk about how hard it really is, how complicated it really is, how long it really takes, all the implications. And the reality is there are two things that people that flip houses inevitably always say. The first is it took a lot longer than we thought, and the second is we didn't make anywhere near as much money as we thought we were going to make. And not to take a shot at flipping houses, my company does that. We certainly are involved in that segment of the market. It's just not where you cut your teeth as a real estate investor. And the best analogy I can give you is real estate investing is no different than another job, okay? So let me ask you this question. If you're going to do a flip, it's probably going to take you 6, 9, I've seen them take longer than 12 months till they go full cycle and the property gets sold because nobody knows when it's going to sell. So ask yourself this question. How long do you want to go to a job that doesn't pay you? Because sometimes it can take that long till you make money. So for the average person, that's hard to get by. They have a hard time with that. I know the average young couple, can you imagine sitting there across the dinner table and asking each other, boy, I wonder when that property is finally going to sell.
Yeah.
It's brutal. So don't buy into all the hype that you see on the TV shows. Can you make money flipping houses? Absolutely. Assuming you do all the right things. And a lot of things have to be handled the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with rentals.
I see all the time, Joe. I'm going to just chime in.
Sure.
And a note on flips real quick is it always takes longer than they thought. I hear that too with every single person who flipped. It cost more than I thought. It took longer than I thought to get it done. It took longer than I thought to sell it, the whole 9 yards. What I see a lot, which I really try to caution people about, but it's hard to give a cautionary message without like coming off accidentally like Captain Buzzkill. But in some markets, I see this happen. I see a guy who's a hardworking, he's a contractor. He works hard. The house next door to him comes up for sale. It's beat up. He decides to buy it, fix it up over the course of a couple months, and sell it. And on paper, if we do what we call the back of the napkin math, it might seem like it works out. But there's a dynamic here that a lot of people forget or don't look at when they try to flip a house, which is the average amount of time it takes a house to sell in that market. And
Sure.
Being here in Eastern PA, I could drive within literally 45 to 60 minutes of my home office, and I could go to a place where the average time a house is listed is 8 days and travel to a place where the average time a house is listed is 8 months. So the flip, I tell people, yeah, you can make a big pile of cash doing a flip, but it is the one type of transaction that, yes, it's the sexiest for all the reasons you pointed out, but it's also the one that has the most amount of dynamics all at play at once. And for that reason, I tell people, learn how the markets and all the other stuff works before you try to do that. And if you get a bunch of other transactions under your belt first, you're going to become probably a damn fine house flipper one day. But it might school you if you try to flip as your first investment. And that's a caution that I give people all the time.
Absolutely. House flipping done the wrong way retires a lot of real estate investors. First time out, it doesn't go well. I mean, the third thing that people that flip houses say sometimes is, well, I'm not going to do that again. And that's one of those things that you don't want to put yourself into as an investor. And again,
you don't want to get discouraged.
Yeah, it's not. There's nothing wrong with it, and we're gonna talk about the other strategies here in a minute. I just like to point that out because people are seduced by what seems to be easy money, and it's only easy if you cover yourself every step of the way, if you know all the right things to do. And I want to jump into the rental side too, because that's the other kind of mainstream strategy that people are familiar with, and you yourself have some experience in that. Here's the plus and the minus of rental. Rental is a long-term strategy. It's a wealth accumulation strategy. You're building equity. You're generating cash flow, so you have some passive income coming in every month. But the drawback to that short term for an investor is that cash flow that you're generating every month, it's not changing your life. Until you get to a point that you've got a dozen, maybe 20 properties, and those little cash flows you're getting out of each property is generating a lot of income for you, it's really not life altering. It's certainly a step in the right direction, but the problem that the average person has is the average person isn't thinking about equity and 5 to 7 years down the road. The average person is worrying about paying next month's bills. So the strategies that tend to be attractive to people, at least starting out, usually are the ones that are more interesting, but they don't realize that they're the ones that might take them longer to get to the right result. So one of the things that I try to do is I try to recommend to people short-term strategies such as wholesaling, contract assignments, finding properties, putting the deals together and assigning them to other investors. Another strategy we talk about are lease options and wholesale lease options. Basically controlling properties without putting a lot of money in, without tying up your own credit, and then finding people to come in behind you so you can generate a little bit of a profit. And the reason why those strategies are very attractive, especially to newer investors, is they don't require a lot of money, and they certainly don't require your credit to be in use. See, those two other strategies, rental and flipping, what people don't like to talk about is the fact that if you're going to flip a property, your time is involved, your money is invested, whether it's your own cash or money that you borrow, and every day that you're on the clock with those things just adds to the pressure. It just adds to the pressure. There's no doubt about it. So I propose, for new investors especially, is focus on short-term strategies that will generate immediate results, even if they're smaller, even if you're making $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 a month on top of what you're currently earning. For the average person, that creates a nice little cushion for themselves. And when you build a business that's doing that consistently and you're ready to take the next step, then look at a different strategy that might take a little longer, but while you're waiting, that $1,000 or $1,500 or $2,000 every month is already coming in and it'll continue to come in. Part of my background was in financial planning, and one of the things that we would always say is you don't plan for your future, you live today and cover your short-term needs, then your midterm needs, and then your long-term needs. But unfortunately, with real estate investing, it's the opposite. People see an infomercial, they hear about somebody flipping a house, and they just kind of lose all common sense. Here's the way I look at this, really simple. You can't risk what you don't put out. If you don't put a lot of money into something and you don't tie up your credit in the process, you aren't risking those things. And for a new investor, that's really where they should start. They should start with strategies that limit their liability, protect their interests, and allows them to kind of gain some traction.
So, Joe, what I want you to do is talk to us a little bit about some of those transactions that you mentioned. You mentioned wholesaling. There's a couple different techniques, and there's a couple different ways that work. Give us a quick little overview of really how wholesaling works and why that's such a great tool for new investors to jump in using that as their primary transaction type to get some cash flow coming in. Talk to us about how that works.
Sure. Well, wholesaling is basically just going out and finding a bargain property, getting it under contract, getting control of it, and then instead of actually buying it yourself, creating a package, figuring out what the property will be worth, getting the repairs estimated correctly, figuring out what it'll be worth when it's all finished up, and then instead of buying it yourself, taking it to another investor and assigning it to them or selling it to them for a simple finder's fee. And the best analogy I can give you is this. at any given time, if you were to look at 10, 20 different investors, in that group of investors, there are people that have a lot of time on their hands, a lot of available time to do things, but they don't necessarily have a lot of money or a lot of resources. And they're on one side of things. On the other side of things, there are people that have a lot of money and a lot of resources, but they just don't have the time to do that legwork. Maybe they have a great job, they make a great living, they want to be in real estate investing, they just don't have the time to invest in finding a good deal. Well, all wholesaling is those two groups kind of getting together. One person finding the deal, creating a package, and then assigning it to another investor who basically buys it from there, and they have a turnkey deal for themselves to invest in. And that's one strategy that a lot of investors get started with is wholesaling.
Yeah, I think that that's a part of the marketplace that a lot of people don't know that it exists unless they start to get some formal education in this area. And I think that that's really a key place to look. But I find it really helpful for another reason, Joe, and you may even encourage some of your students to do this. One of the reasons why I find it really helpful is because assuming you're going to do a flip or buy some rentals, finding a couple wholesale deals and getting them under contract and working the deal and putting a package together to represent that property and help somebody else get into it, doing that gives you a lot of practice and experience in not only just working with realtors or finding properties with or without a realtor, but also doing walkthroughs, doing a basic inspection, figuring out what scope of work is involved. It gives you a real good education just going through those steps alone, and those are things you're going to need to get good at the further and further you get in your real estate investment career.
Absolutely. It does give you an invaluable amount of experience in analyzing a deal, and it also puts you in a position to generate a shorter term profit. It's very realistic to go out there with all the right training and understanding of how you do these things, and within a matter of a few weeks generate thousands of dollars in profit. As a wholesaler, I have a lot of experience in wholesaling properties, and as I said, I've done as many as 12 to 15 on average on a monthly basis. I think my best month ever was a little over 20 properties in 1 month. The reality is each individual property didn't take that much time. I mean, it might have been an average of somewhere between 7 to 8 hours average per property of time invested. And for the average person, being able to make $3,000, $4,000, maybe $5,000 for an investment of 8 to 10 hours of their time, it makes a whole lot of sense. It really does.
Yeah,
but it's like anything else. You have to know exactly what to do. You have to have the right strategy, know the right steps, and it really is a unique part of the marketplace because there are more and more people that do wholesaling, but I'm going to tell you there's not a lot of people that do it well. And that's one of the things that I try to teach people. One of the things that's unique about the approach that I take, it's not about going out and making money on a deal-by-deal basis. It's about doing it in a way that you set yourself up to have a viable business doing it. Ongoing. At what point does it get easier for you? Well, a lot of people, they cut a lot of corners, they take a lot of liberties, and they think they're making money, and all they're really doing is they have to reinvent the wheel every time out.
Mm-hmm.
And what I teach people is, look, do the right work, lay the right foundation, do the right job, and it'll start paying you over and over again down the road. And that's a big difference. I mean, there's a lot of people that are out there doing things now, but the key is you need to be one of the educated ones.
Talk to us, Joe. You mentioned wholesale with a lease option. What exactly does that mean?
Sure. Yeah, lease options are a different segment of the marketplace. Probably everybody here is familiar with for sale by owners, right? Some of these properties are move-in condition type properties. Some of them have tenants that are already in there. For lease options, you're literally controlling a property, and not necessarily taking title. You're going to get control of the property, negotiate a lease with the current tenant, and then bring in somebody behind you to take over the property via another lease and ultimately, hopefully, buy that property. And one of the main targets in that side of the market, Conrad, is the for sale by owner side of the business. There's a lot of people out there that are trying to sell their own home. Maybe they don't have any equity. Maybe they don't want to work with a realtor. Maybe they can't work with a realtor. And lease options, in many cases, can be a viable option. Part of the reason why I like to talk about lease options is you can do them on smaller properties. You can do them on larger properties. And the nice thing is, if you do it the right way, you're not tying up a lot of money, and you're not tying up your own credit. You're out there again getting into viable transactions without exposing yourself financially, whether it's in cash or in credit. You're doing it in a very conservative way. And because of that, a lot of people do get started in lease options in addition to wholesaling. In fact, when I work with people, if they are at all in a situation where their current monthly income is shaky, or let's say they don't have money put aside in reserves, 3, maybe up to 6 months of their bills put aside in a savings account or a checking account, if they don't have that, I would recommend that they focus on short-term strategies like wholesaling and lease options, things they can go out and make them a little bit of money in the short term before they ever think about doing a more complicated strategy. It just makes much more financial sense.
Sure. And I hear people all the time, they ask, okay, so those types of contracts, they take very little money out of my own pocket to do. Most of it is sweat equity, because once you gain that contract and now you have the exclusive right to represent that property to some other investor who's going to buy it, or you also have the right to buy it yourself, so says the contract.
Right.
People say, so how much little money are we talking about? And so what I'll ask you to tell us a little bit about, and you can also give some average numbers, but I'll just tell you quickly about my experience. Basically, you usually a small amount of money changes hands in order to confirm the contract. And that happens with other types of contracts other than not just real estate contracts. But in real estate, we have the tendency to use this phrase earnest money, it's called. And really all that is money that is going to be applied toward the purchase price or applied toward the down payment. Joe, you could talk a little bit more about it, but in my experience in working with some of these types of transactions, I've paid anywhere from as little as $100 in earnest money, and I hear other people pay a couple $100s for single houses and other circumstances, and I'm sure it probably ranges all over the place depending on the nature of the property, Joe. But when people say, what kind of money do I need to wholesale, it's really just a couple bucks. Joe, is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. I mean, one of the things that I like to teach people in our training is that you minimize at every opportunity the amount of money you do put in a deposit. And just as you said, as low as $100, maybe up to a maximum of $200 or $250. It does have something to do with the property, but in reality, it really is just whatever the comfort level is of the individual investor. And I tell people, look, if you're starting out and you're brand new and you're green as it relates to real estate investing, there is no reason to take big risks. There is no reason at all. And the way that I teach people is how to make sure that they protect themselves every step of the way. Well, putting a big deposit on a property, let's say, for example, you're in an area where a fixer-upper type property might sell for $20,000 or $25,000. Well, putting a $2,500 deposit on a property like that would just it just wouldn't make sense. So here's what I remind people all the time. It is your right to offer whatever you want to offer, and it's their right to accept or decline your offer. And many times I've coached students to say to people, well, that's my offer. Sorry, I'm not going any higher. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially when you're just starting out. Don't risk bigger deposits. So the lower the better. 100 sounds like a great number. I wouldn't go anywhere above 200 or 250. I know the temptation is always great, but think about this. If you're making 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 offers, how much money is out there in deposits if you get a couple going. Just be smart. So I would say the lower the amount, the better.
Sure, great answer. One of the things that I promised that we would share on the broadcast tonight, and before I ask the question, Joe, what I do want to do is, I know we got some people a couple of you who are here live on the Hangout, and we got a couple of you who are watching the live stream. Usually it's because they chose not to install the plugin or something else, but just know if you're watching the live stream, I can certainly take your questions via that chat box you see, but we won't be able to hear you. So if you did want to be able to ask your question with your own voice, please use the Hangout button or the blue Start button, and you can actually watch the stream in the Hangout mode instead of the stream mode. But either way is cool with us. I'll definitely relay your questions here. I can see them. I can see that there's some of you watching there, so use that chat box. But one thing that I really enjoy the most when I first met you, Joe, and I definitely want you to share some of these tidbits with the people listening tonight, is people that jump into real estate for whatever reason or whatever kind of transaction they like or whatever types of transactions they're doing right now, there's really a few key things. I don't know if we want to call them lessons, but I'll just call them, they're really three keys to kind of, I don't want to say being successful or not, but the three keys kind of separate people who have consistent wins and people who, like you said, kind of have to reinvent the wheel each time and kind of have to start up again each time, or find themselves pulling themselves up by the bootstraps again and again. And when you and I first met, and you started to tell me about some of these things that you've obviously learned them as lessons yourself, and you teach them to your students, I've learned many of them as lessons myself, just jumping in, because I didn't have a coach or a mentor when I got in. I learned how to do some of this stuff literally out of books, and audio tapes and DVDs and stuff like that. But there's really these three key differentiating factors, and it's kind of a big part of your philosophy and how you guide your students. And I really want you to share those three big keys to success with us here. And those of you participating here in the Hangout or watching on the live stream, I'll tell you what, guys, this is a time that this is a great time to write some stuff down. You got some pen and paper handy. These are really good tidbits, and it gives you something to really think on, especially if you find yourself starting to get really serious with this stuff. So, Joe, I do want to let you talk about those three keys, and then I also want to say that we're definitely going to reserve some time coming up on the broadcast for you to get questions answered, and we'll let you ask questions, and we'll address them here, one-on-one, and get through as many as we can. But, Joe, I want you to talk about those three keys to success for us, and how you've learned some of those lessons and why you feel they're so important.
Oh, certainly. There are three things that I think differentiates people that are wildly successful as real estate investors versus the people that kind of start and stop, fizzle out, stall out, whatever you want to call it. And I've been around a lot of them. I mean, I probably personally know thousands of different real estate investors in multiple states. And it's funny, as I've had this exact conversation with other coaches, other mentors. I had a conversation with a guy who, was a good personal friend of mine, and he's all the way out in Arizona, and he is a coach. And we were going over this stuff, and we were just comparing philosophies on things. So there's three things that I think really separate successful real estate investors, the consistent successful real estate investors, from the ones that struggle to really make a go of things. So here are the three things, and Conrad made a great point. If you have an opportunity to jot down some notes, this might be a good point to do that. So the first thing that I think really separates investors, successful ones from unsuccessful ones, is mindset. One of the things that absolutely makes a difference when you're a real estate investor is the type of mindset that you take into your business. And what I mean by that is this: there are some people that go out and become accidental real estate investors. Their neighbor, and Conrad, you gave an example, their neighbor is trying to sell their house, they buy their neighbor's house, they fix it up, they find themselves in a situation, they make a couple of bucks, and next thing they know, they are a real estate investor. And maybe they do that a couple of times, and they get themselves kind of moving in the right direction, but they just can't seem to ever hit a stride. Well, a lot of times it has to do with mindset. It has to do with the fact that they don't necessarily look at themselves truly as a business owner. They really have put themselves in the position of being an employee for themselves. Now, the problem with that methodology is that there's only so much time in a day. There's only so much that you can accomplish by yourself. And unless you become really good at directing other people, you're probably not going to reach your full potential. Your mindset as a real estate investor should be as a business owner, as a director of traffic, so to speak. I kind of look at it, I use a lot of analogies. I use sports analogies all the time. It's like being the head coach of a football team. You're never, ever going to make the play yourself, but you're going to have to call the play, and other people are going to have to run it for you. Well, as a real estate investor, that involves a lot of different things: contracting, property management, all these other things. And I know a lot of investors do that work themselves. And secretly, I do know that those people tend to be investors that can only get to a certain point. There's only so much time in a day. There's only so many nights, holidays, and weekends for them to work on their own properties before they get to a point where they hit a wall and they give up. And unfortunately, when that wall is hit, they become the worst thing that a real estate investor can ever become, and that is a motivated seller, because they put themselves in a position where they're done. They just want to be out of their properties, out of their portfolio. They want to cash out. They want to go to Florida. They want to call it a day. And inevitably, that always happens at the wrong time. Wrong time in the market, just whatever. And I'm going to tell you, I've made a lot of money from people that have sold portfolios because they just had to get out of them. So I want to give you another example as far as mindset goes. You know, a lot of people are the architects of their own demise. You know, they look at everything that they face as an investor as a problem that they can't overcome. And I'm going to tell you that no matter where you are, no matter what you're dealing with a little bit of objectivity and some time to reflect, there's usually a good answer for whatever problem you have. And sometimes that mindset needs to be adjusted. But that's the first thing you need to have. You need to have the right mindset to be an investor. Now, the second thing you need to have, and this personally I think is one of the things that I excel at a little bit. You know, my mindset was always pretty decent. I'm not the best numbers guy, but the one thing that I learned up how to do pretty early in life and became very adept at doing as a real estate investor was the second element that you really need to have, and that's creating systems. You have to have a system for everything that you do. Real estate investing is so dynamic. There are so many variables and so many different things that you need to take a look at that you can't go into every property and do it a different way. You have to have a system for everything that you do. The only way that I was able to go out and wholesale 12, 15, as many as 20 properties a month was because I built in some pretty strong systems. I'm going to tell you, towards the end of that, when I built that wholesaling business that way, I wasn't even physically seeing the properties that I was wholesaling. I had set it up to the point that other people were inspecting them for me, giving me an inspection report. I was crunching the numbers. I was dealing directly with buyers, and that was where I needed to spend my time. That was my system. Now, everybody's situation is unique. Everybody has their own challenges in life and their own schedule. So the one thing I'm going to tell you that separates successful investors from unsuccessful investors is the really smart ones, the successful ones, they figure out a system that works well for them. They figure out something that will go out and work within their own life, their own lifestyle, and allow them the opportunity to gain traction and move forward. Because the problem is with the absence of a system, the first set of obstacles or challenges that you face can just literally knock you off track. But if you have systems in place that you follow each and every time on each and every type of deal that you do, it becomes very easy when you face some type of adversity to just kind of get right back where you need to be because you just insert yourself back into the system. So the second thing is systems. So we have mindset and we have systems. The third, which is every bit as important, as the first two, and this is one that a lot of investors struggle with, is network. Who do they have in their personal network? What resources are available to them? Do they have all the right people to work with? You know, we're talking a lot of different people when you're a real estate investor. You have realtors, contractors, property managers, accountants, attorneys, appraisers, clean out guys, handymen, you know, property inspection guys. I mean, there's just so many different categories. You really need to develop your own network of valuable professional resources. In addition to just the vendor side, you also need to develop resources and network with other real estate investors. One of the things that's a big part of how I train other investors is I train them to look at other real estate investors other than themselves, not as competition. Okay, these other investors are people that you can jointly make money with. But unfortunately, people have this confrontational approach to them. There's plenty of opportunity out there for everybody if you network, if you have the right resources. Network is one of those things that trips up a lot of people. They can't find a good contractor, they can't find a good property manager, they can't find the right resources financially. You know, one of the things that I do for my own students is I'm constantly vetting resources. I'm constantly updating my own list of resources. I just went out and negotiated terms with a private lender to fund qualified flips for members of our program. We did that simply because we know that that was something that people were asking for. So the third thing, and every bit as important as those first two, is having the right network. I'm going to tell you the problems that I've had in my life as it related to real estate or in business general. The only time that I had major significant issues was when I was associated with the wrong people. You know, and this is just a reality in business. You can put yourself in a position where you're working with very qualified, experienced people, or you can put yourself in a position where they are no better qualified than yourself and you're trying to get direction from them. So, you know, the reality is the right network makes all the difference in the world.
This is an area where I see a lot of people sort of succeed or fail. And really the reason is if the network is not right or you haven't really developed those resources, not only does it take you a long time to get where you're going, but it almost always costs more than it could have or should have. And that could be anywhere from, you know, a contractor having a big mistake or spending too much on materials. Those are the obvious ones. But just in your network, think about it. It could come down to a title issue or a deed transfer issue, and that's when your lawyers and the people who advise you on legal matters in a real estate business, you know, are really, you need to have a good relationship with those people and trust them because they're going to have your back and look out for your interests. And so in a way, you know, because I had been running my own business for a while, I sort of had some of that developed, and I was sort of successful there in establishing a network and resources, but on accident. And then I kind of met my own few stumbling blocks when I realized, well, on a few matters here and there, I can't necessarily get reliable advice that holds up again and again. And that's a sign that you need to improve your network of resources that you have access to, and spend the time and energy developing that. And I think that's a really big key area that a lot of people getting involved for the first time kind of miss out on. They think, yeah, this is available to me. Yeah, I can go in the yellow pages. Yeah, I could Google it. You know, but the truth is, if this is something that you're going to get serious about and do again and again, there's quite a few things that you could be doing to establish great relationships with these people rather than just, you know, calling the number out of the book.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to tell you that, you know, part of my success as a real estate investor has a lot to do with the quality of the network of people that I've become associated with. And I'm going to tell you that one of the things that those people learned about working with me was I worked very, very hard to take care of their business as well as my own. And I learned that it was always more profitable for me as an investor to try to help take care of their interests than trying to restart and find somebody new to do the work that they were doing for me. And for that reason, I've been able to work with certain contractors, property managers, different vendors in multiple markets for an extended amount of time. And that makes all the difference in the world. When you need something to pick up the phone and know that you have a 4, 5, 6 year relationship with somebody, and they just drop what they're doing because they want to be able to help take care of you.
Yeah,
That's a huge difference.
Relationships are key. I'll just give you one quick example of a great set of relationships that we've established here, and have really proven to be invaluable in the market that I'm in up here, sort of in the coal pockets of northeastern PA near the Poconos. In the towns that we like to buy in, what I've learned is I can gain a hell of a lot of information about a property, a previous owner, and the conditions of the true condition of a property with the women that work at the local municipality collecting the local water, sewer, and garbage bills. And I've learned that as part of my network, the relationships there are extremely valuable. And these are people who want to help investors because they view people like us as doing good things in their towns. They want positive things to happen to someone's derelict property. They want great things to happen to a place that is maybe burned out or abandoned. These leaders in local municipalities and boroughs, they want to see these things improve. So if you go to them looking for some advice or help, saying, hey, what's going on here? I can't track down answers about this or that or the other thing, or I can't track down the owner, or whatever the situation is. These people want to see changes take place in their community, and if they've got some information that they can share, they tell you.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I mean, the saying that I like to say, and I don't remember where I first heard it, but I use it quite often, is in the stock market, inside information is illegal. But in the real estate industry, it's essential. I mean, if you get people that point you in the right direction, that get you to deals. Look, a lot of people don't realize this, but a realtor has up to, I believe, 48 hours to put something in the MLS when they get it. Well, a lot of business gets transacted in that first 48 hours. If you're an active investor and you do a lot of business and a realtor knows that and you have a relationship with them and they get a hot deal across their desk and they know that you'll make an offer on it really quick, before their fingers ever get near that computer, they are on the phone to you. And I know they're not supposed to do that. Everybody knows they're not supposed to do that. But everybody also knows it happens all the time.
Yeah. So, and ask me how I know. I was just laughing and waving at your example. Ask me how I know. Yeah. A realtor who I love and respect immensely out in Schuylkill County, she called me one day and she said, Conrad, I've got this listing and I'm going to list it, but it's kind of a situation where it's really going to sit and it's going to be really hard for me to sell this on the retail market. And she said, I know you or one of your guys or an investor that you're connected with can make something really good happen for this person really quickly and get them out of the situation that they're in. And we got that call like 2 hours after she left the meeting with her seller, and that's the reason. These people want to help people who are investors because they know that we can come in and improve a situation where otherwise it might sit for longer or get in worse and worse condition.
Absolutely, and it's funny you mentioned that about realtors because a lot of people work with realtors. Some people like to go and work on their own, finding direct sellers. There's a lot of ways of getting the job done. I like working with realtors because they can do a lot of work for me for free versus me investing a lot of my own time. But I'm often asked by people that I coach, well, can I work with one of your realtors? And I certainly have no problem sharing a realtor, but I give them the realities. I go, well, let's say I give you one of my realtors. Not a problem. And let's say they get a hot deal across their desk, and I've done 20, 30 deals already with them, and you're brand new with them. Do you think they're going to call me first, or do you think they're going to call you first? And everybody goes, well, they'll call you first. And I go, well, wouldn't you rather have your realtor call you first?
Yeah.
And the answer is always, well, yeah. And I said, let me teach you how.
Yeah,
Let me teach you how to make that.
yeah, I don't have any problem recommending a realtor that I
Uh,
think is awesome, but that recommendation isn't going to give you the relationship I have with them just like that.
exactly. And that's one of the, hey, the reality is money is the grease that moves the wheel. And if you've helped make these people money, your call will get received and returned a lot quicker than anybody else's calls. And I have no problem at all being that direct with people and sharing that with them. But more importantly, I do it as a teaching tool to show them that this is exactly why you need to build relationships with these people. That's what we'll teach you how to do. I can give you other people that it's not as essential, but with your realtor, that's one of those very personal relationships. You want them committed to you. You want them, just like you said, Conrad, within an hour or two after they lock up a contract or hear about it, you want to be their first call.
Yeah, absolutely. It's completely true, and those relationships that you keep with other professionals in the space are absolutely critical.
Yep.
So I think we over delivered on content here. We got a couple minutes left, and really what I'd like to do is kind of just open the floor up for questions. And a few of you who are participating, I recognize, and I know that there's a couple people in here watching, not just in the Hangout but on the stream, who I think I would consider very serious about getting involved in real estate for the first time. So I'd like to invite you to put a question in the chat box, or if you want to ask a question with your real life voice, we would obviously love to hear you. You can let me know in the chat box, and I'll unmute you so you could ask. I got a couple questions here that we already got in. Actually, I'm going to go to Corinne here first because she's participating in the live stream. So if Joe wants to ask her a follow-up, she can. But Corinne's question is really about wholesaling, and what she's interested in is what do you think, Joe, are some of the best ways to get connected with investors who are looking for deals to come to them? I guess what she's really asking is looking for buyers, networking with buyers. What are some of the best ways that you have learned or teach people who want to wholesale get connected with buyers?
Sure. Well, there are a lot of different ways, and this is one of those things that your results in this area are going to depend on a couple of things. The first is you better know and understand truly how to identify the right type of deal, how to package the right deal, and know how to present it to a buyer. Because here's the way this works. You really only have one opportunity at that first impression with a buyer, and if you're dealing with a qualified buyer, they could buy from you one property after the other. So you need to make sure that you're qualified to put everything together the right way. So the first thing I would say is you need to educate yourself. And obviously I'm in the business of educating people, but that isn't automatic. You need to do it, because if you engage with a buyer, you better make sure you bring your A game, because these people are there to make financial decisions. They're going to want to make sure that you're the right type of person to work with. But assuming that you do that, and you do it the right way, and I can certainly teach you how to do it, finding the right buyers is a factor of a couple of things. The first is you need to network with other real estate investors, because I'm going to tell you one of the things that's unique about real estate investing, depending upon the individual deal, sometimes you're a wholesaler, sometimes you're a buyer, sometimes you're a conduit between two people, sometimes you're a guy who knows a guy who's interested in that property. So the more investors you know, the more business you can get done on a wholesale side. One of the things that's very easy to do as far as locating cash buyers is to go to real estate investment networking groups. Things like this are beneficial because there's other people on here that you can network with. There are groups on Facebook. I would encourage you to encourage other people to join the groups that we're involved with as far as real estate investors go. The stronger the group becomes, the easier it is to connect to people. Just in that group, there are people that are wholesalers and there are people that are buyers. No question about it. You're going to want to do some things on some of the free bulletin boards that are out there, like Craigslist and different real estate boards. But I'm going to tell you, there is a whole science to how you do that effectively, how to market the right way. Locating cash buyers, it's really about acquiring information. How do you get their name, their email address, their phone number, and what properties they're interested in is really, like I said, it's a science. I'll give you a couple of little hints, and then I'll kind of move on to the next question. I hope this answered it, but be generic. Don't offer up too many specifics, because when people are looking to find a good deal, they don't even know what it looks like themselves sometimes. So be generic when you market. If you're going to put an ad out, make it generic. Don't be specific. And the reason is, when you are very specific, when you market something, you tend to alienate people, because they see one thing specifically and they think, well, that's not what I'm interested in, so I'm not even going to bother. So when you market to find cash buyers, you have to flip that around. You have to be very generic, non-specific, to acquire as many people generating interest as you can. I hope that answered your question for you, Corinne.
I think everyone sort of, when you're looking for buyers, every buyer's buying for some different reason. So I think really getting connected with them is either a function of networking or it's a function of marketing. In my experience in real estate, finding listings that could be bought or sold, and finding buyers was always very easy. Those parts were always very easy for me, finding the properties and finding the buyers, because I viewed those things as a function of marketing, which is what I do every day anyway. So that was real easy for me. All of the other work in between, that was where my friend and my business partner came in, because he was helping out with a lot of the work in between those two parts of the transaction, which makes it work really great. I got a question, so Corinne, obviously, if you've got another question or follow-up, feel free to chime in, because we've got a couple more moments. I do have a question, though, from someone watching on the stream, and the question is from a Brenda. Thanks for watching on the stream. We're sorry you're not in the Hangout itself. And actually, Joe, her question is really about real estate markets. And on my comment earlier, I mentioned some places are really tricky to flip because the average time a house is spent on the market is so long. And Brenda's real question is, how can does the marketplace is there a certain marketplace that's to my advantage to wholesale, or if the market doesn't matter for wholesaling, how do I point out if a market is more advantageous to rent and hold or to try to flip? What are sort of the market indications that say it's a good spot for one sort of deal or another?
That's a great question, Brenda. That's one that I get asked a lot in my training, and I think it's one of those marketing skill sets that a successful investor needs to learn for themselves. Just going out and figuring out how to analyze a deal isn't enough. I mean, you need to know and understand the end result. And if the end result is you being able to wholesale a property to another investor, well, then you better know how you increase the odds. And one of the things that I teach people as it relates to increasing the odds for wholesaling is, keep in mind that most of these transactions are cash transactions, where somebody is writing a check to buy the house, and many times they're just writing a check to pay a contractor or to pay for materials to fix up the house. So it stands to reason that if wholesaling is a strategy that you want to focus on, it is usually best served in a market where the average property value is a little lower than average. And the reason is, the smaller that amount of the property is, the total all-in cost on a property would be, the smaller that amount is, the larger the pool of potential buyers. And it stands to reason that if you're going to try to wholesale in a higher value market, the check that somebody would have to write or the amount of money that would have to be financed to do that deal would be much, much larger. It stands to reason that the pool of people that could do that would be much, much smaller. So if you're going to start off as a wholesaler, I would recommend you start in a market where the average value is lower versus higher. And one of the nice things about this whole region that we're in, it doesn't matter whether you're in the Lehigh Valley, if you're up in the Poconos, if you're over in Schuylkill County, Berks County, wherever you are, there's pockets all over the place where you can get properties certainly at and well below the $50,000 mark, which is a really nice sweet spot for cash buyers.
Good answer. Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what you said there, and my experience sort of corroborates the exact same thing. That is a really good question. Looks like we've got two more. I've got one from Thomas, who's here with us here in the Hangout. Thomas, we'll get to you in just a second. And I've got also one from John, who is on the live stream. And the question, oh, hang on. You know how phones are. You touch one thing wrong and you lose it. The question from the live stream from John, Joe, his question is actually about the realtor market versus what's listed and what's not. And he said that he's heard a lot of people say getting listings. I said it, maybe a few times here today when we talk about getting listings or finding an available property, and so that kind of tips the card to say that some of these properties are not for sale. So John specifically looking for pros and cons of listed versus unlisted properties and how that might help him do something differently. What's the advantage to sourcing unlisted properties, and what's the difference?
Well, that's a great question. I get asked this one a lot. Everybody has their own preference to the types of properties that they're looking at, whether they are listed or whether they are unlisted, and everybody believes one might be better than the other. I'm not going to answer at which one is better than the other because I think that's really a personal choice. What I am going to say is you have to ask yourself a simple question. How can I get more done faster? And as far as individual non-listed properties, for you to track down owners, for you to sit down with owners and personally engage owners and try to negotiate deals individually with them, it takes a lot of time. When you work with a realtor, it's much easier to locate properties that are already there. You can set in motion your realtor doing a lot of that work for you. Let's face it, they've chosen a career path where they're out there working hard, submitting offers, fielding offers, going back and forth. Let them do that work for you. That's my opinion. Now, that doesn't mean there's not great deals both sides of the fence. I've done a lot of wholesale transactions, and I'm going to tell you probably 95% of them were listed properties. And that was because I liked my realtor doing work for me. I liked them working for free. I focused as a wholesaler on selling the properties. They focused on helping me acquire the properties. It was a good synergy. Unfortunately, if you try to find all those deals on your own, it's not possible. I'll tell you, probably at my peak as a wholesaler, I was making between 40 and 50 offers a week. There is no way, working on my own, could I contact that many individual homeowners, sit down with them, make a viable offer, and negotiate terms. But because I was working with a realtor, I had a couple of really good ones, and they did a lot of legwork for me, including inspecting properties, giving me rehab estimates, doing things that they probably wouldn't have done, but because of the volume of business I was doing, I easily convinced them that it was to their benefit, and it was. And the difference between a realtor and doing all that work is they were doing all that work for free, up front, waiting for me to get those deals closed. And that didn't exist on the non-listed properties. So I won't tell you which side you want to fall on. That's entirely up to you, and there's great deals either way. But just be smart about how you spend your time. Use an investor mindset and ask yourself, where's my time best served?
Cool, good answer. Got one final question, it looks like, from Tom, who is joining us. Tom's up in the Poconos as well. I saved Tom's question for last because it is a rockin' and convenient segue. Tom's question is, Joe, are there any live networking groups in the Poconos?
Live networking groups? You mean like real estate investment groups? I believe there are a few. I think what you need to do in the Pocono area, and I'm down in the Allentown area, so I'm not up in the Poconos. I make the occasional jaunt up there. It may or may not involve a casino. What you want to do to locate local real estate live networking groups is it's as simple as going on to Google real estate investment associations, and go right in there, and it'll pull down anything that's close by. You know, I'm going to tell you about real estate investors, whether they're buyers or wholesalers. An hour doesn't make that big of a difference. I've made hundreds of thousands of dollars in Baltimore. I live in Allentown. It's well worth it to drive an hour to go find a viable deal. So if you got to come to Allentown to network, it's well worth it. If you got to go north to network, it's well worth it. But it's very easy to find local investment groups right in your local area by typing in name of the town, real estate investment networking groups, and it'll pull things down for you. It's that simple, and it doesn't matter whether it's in the Poconos or anywhere else. I would encourage you, to do that regularly in the areas that you'd like to do business, because it's just a great way of locating not only the networking meetings but also other investors.
Yeah, I think that I've recommended Meetup in the past to people. You can use the website meetup.com, fire in some keywords, just like Joe mentioned, and stuff pops up, which is also a really cool way. Even if they don't have events going on and they don't have an event scheduled coming up, you can see who else is in that Meetup group, and that is a great way to start networking with other investors. But I think the key thing is to get serious and get involved and really make that first jump in, is to start networking with other investors and other people who are engaged and in the space right now, which is why, for those of you who are listening, what I want to do, and I know I recognize a couple of the names, and I know there's a few of you who I feel are really serious about taking your education in this space a little bit further. So what I would like to do is, here to conclude tonight's hangout, tonight's broadcast, is I would just like to invite everybody to a live and in-person workshop where Joe is going to sort of take the content from tonight and just really take it to the next level, have some more time to dig in. I think, Joe, your workshops, what is it, like 2.5 hours, something like that?
Yeah, it's probably going to be right around 2 hours.
Cool.
What's unique about it, and this just goes to the difference in how I look at the business and how my group looks at the business, is, there's no hype, there's no BS in what we do. We spend about 2 hours talking about real estate investing, a sound financial approach to real estate investing, how you separate yourself from other investors, and we get into 5 different profit strategies right in this live event. And we talk about wholesaling, lease options, we talk about how you wholesale a lease option contract, we get into flipping properties, we get into rentals, we get into all these strategies. And we do it right in a live event. I show examples of properties that I've done myself. We make it very, very interactive. And most importantly, we give people an opportunity to truly see a sound game plan to how to get themselves where they need to go. See, most people, they know they can make money in real estate investing. It's no secret, not a surprise. If you didn't know this already, people do make money investing in real estate. Now,
Yep.
Will they do it on an ongoing basis? Will they make money at it consistently? Will they possibly turn it into a business that can change their life? That depends on a lot of other factors. And that's where, an organization like mine comes in. We're very passionate about working with people. We're passionate about trying to increase the quality of the general investment community, because the reality is the better business that every investor does, the easier it is for everybody to benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody benefits when people aren't doing good business out there.
Yeah.
And we really invest a lot into the community that does that. And, we do have a live event coming up next week. It's down in Bethlehem on Wednesday the 13th at 7 o'clock at the Best Western, Lehigh Valley, right there off of 512. No matter where you're coming from, if you're up in the Poconos, it's not far. If you're in the Lehigh Valley, it's only a couple of minutes away. I encourage you to take a look at this live event. If you know already that you're in a position that you need a little bit of help and you don't quite know how to get started, what you want to do, how you want to approach it, I do free consultations to anybody that is serious about real estate investing. And I say that simply because, look, I'm a full-time real estate investor myself. I run a coaching business. There is a fee associated to what we do. It is a very low cost to entry. And the reason it's so low is we selectively choose who we work with. I only want to work with people that are serious. I have no interest in working with somebody unless they're serious about doing this. It doesn't help me. It doesn't help the community at large. But if you are serious about wanting to do real estate on an ongoing basis, and more importantly about having the right mindset and creating the right systems and certainly building the right network, then I encourage you to seek me out. I'm completely open with sharing my contact with information with everybody. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on all these things, and if you got a pen and paper handy, I'm going to give out my personal cell phone. So if you ever want to see somebody that's about as direct and straightforward as you can be as a real estate investor, I'm going to put my personal contact number right out there. Send me a text or give me a call, and I'll call you back, and we'll schedule a time to talk. My direct contact number is 484-719-3690. You can call me or text me. We'll certainly sit down, talk, and I'll go over exactly what we could do to help you as an investor. I know Conrad and I have talked about doing hangouts like this on an ongoing basis. I really hope this has been valuable. If for no other reason, to know that that's the case, reach out for me or reach out for Conrad and just say, hey, look, I appreciate it. Give us some feedback. We certainly would love to hear it. I'd like to continue doing these things and adding value wherever we can, and hope that you guys make the most of it. None of this stuff matters unless you do something with it. And if there's a personal recommendation or challenge that I can give you, is don't be like 98% of the people out there that learn stuff, collect information, and do nothing with it. Don't do that to yourself. This is not a dress rehearsal. Life is your opportunity to make the most of it, and I'm going to tell you that it's there for you to do, but you got to do something. You have to take action.
I say all the time, information without implementation just leads to frustration.
Absolutely.
Most of the people who are going around in circles, that's the reason why. They do a lot of research, they might talk to a lot of people, and at the end of the day, there's a difference between getting the information and talking the talk and actually just putting the work in and getting it done. Those of you who are hanging out with us, I definitely want to say thanks. I definitely want to say thanks to you, Joe, for sharing your expertise and being so gracious and not only answering the questions I was firing at you for beginners all night, but then answering some of these specific questions here toward the end. So thank you very much for playing along, and I do hope that we get to do this on a regular basis. Joe's live workshop is taking place next week. As he said, it's Wednesday the 13th. It's 7 p.m. in Bethlehem. You guys already know that Joe is local. His office is in the Lehigh Valley, and the workshop, he runs it very regularly. So I really would recommend you guys check that out. And Joe, I already beat you to it because a few moments before you gave away your phone number, I put the RSVP link and your personal cell phone number in the chat box, and I will do the same thing on the replay. So I encourage you guys to fill out that quick form and just RSVP and let Joe know you want in on the workshop. Again, that workshop next Wednesday, it's totally free to attend. and there's nothing for sale there. It's all education, and you could expect Joe to do a deep dive on a lot of the topics that he touched base on tonight and give you an additional opportunity to ask more questions right there live and in person. And I know some of Joe's students always show up there too, so it's going to be a good opportunity for you to network with other investors. So do take advantage of that key opportunity. And I got just one final message. Tom did message us, Joe, while you were answering the last question. And Tom wants to know, and I might just jump in and answer this for you, because there's an answer and then there's a really right answer. Tom's question is, do you guys have any contractor recommendations in the Poconos? Tom says, I've got 3 houses right now that definitely need some work. And I want to say that, yes, I'm sure we both have recommendations, but what I want to tell you, Tom, more importantly, is to do yourself a favor, and I would say reach out to Joe one-on-one. Use that RSVP link and shoot him a text message, because I think, Tom, what's more important for a guy like you, where you're at right now, is not only you get great recommendations for great and competent contractors, but I would love for you to hear some of Joe's advice about how to actually manage and hire out that work, so that you know things are happening the right way and that you get some advice on actually managing those people. It's not just about getting people who are great at what they do, but it's about building a really good relationship with them. And if you are in the place right now where you've got 3 properties, Tom, what I think you want to do is you don't just want to find a great guy who you like and get a great quote. Again, both of us could recommend contractors we've used that cover your area, but what I think you want to be doing is taking some of Joe's advice about building those key relationships, because those relationships you're going to really be able to leverage because you already have 3 places that need some work. So relationships are going to give you great leverage for sitting in the seat that you're in right now, Tom. And Joe, I'll turn it over to you. I hope you find that's a fair answer, but I wanted to jump in with that with my own 2 cents.
No, that would be what I would recommend as well. I mean, that is some very good advice, and certainly I'll do whatever I can to help you, Tom, point you in the right direction. And you know, Conrad brings up a big point. I mean, there's such a thing as putting a Band-Aid on something, and there's such a thing as going right to the root cause and making sure that you don't ever have a need for a Band-Aid again. And I like to make sure that, you know, when I work with somebody and I teach them stuff, that along the way that they learn from things and they don't kind of avoid that issue or situation going forward. So reach out for me. I certainly would love to talk to you, whether it's individually one-on-one or at our live event. We'll do whatever we can to help you.
All right, very cool. Tom's given me the thumbs up, so that's a satisfactory answer. We got good reviews all around. Thanks for the positive comments. We're definitely going to do this again, so keep your eyes out in the group. Tom and some of the other guys, and Corinne, I hope you guys sign up for the live workshop. Again, it's free. Use that link, and I'll put the link and Joe's number so you could RSVP with the replay stuff as well, because this will be a stream that you'll be able to replay a little bit later on YouTube. So we'll make sure we share that information there. And keep your eye out on the local real estate groups there on Facebook for future invites. Thanks, everyone, for spending this time with us here tonight. Hope it's been educational, and I hope you had some fun with it.
Thank you, Conrad. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Good night.